What's going on, everybody? Back with another video. We're looking at round 3 from the chess 2024 Olympiad, and this is Italy's Grandmaster Lorenzo Lodici with the white pieces versus A.Giri with the black pieces. So let's get right into it. Without further ado, please hit the like button and check the links below if you want to support the channel. So we're going to get right into this game. And
the screw, because while it's been difficult for A.Giri, who does offer the handshake and the resignation, we should also offer plaudits where it's due for how Lodici was able to navigate this game.
And what a win this is for Lodici, beating a 2,700 plus player in A.Giri on this stage, keeping Italy in this match. You see the players discussing variations. Anisha's probably like, I'm not familiar with your game.
Absolutely crushing defeat, and we're gonna get into the analysis here. So the game started off d4 from Lorenzo Lodici, who's 24 years old, by the way, rated 2556. Anisha's rated 2724, so significant ratings point advantage. Knight f6 from Giri, c4, e6, so Nimzo Indian. Knight c3, bishop b4, e3. And we're entering into this Rubinstein variation. b6, bishop d3, bishop b7, and now knight ge2. This is all well known. Give up the pawn here, and then play rook g1. If white wants, white can just get the pawn back. But Lorenzo plays bishop f3 here. I'm sorry, Anish plays bishop f3 here, and then instead of taking the pawn, Lorenzo plays rook g3, just simply attacking the bishop. Rook takes g7 is possible, and black has some activity here, and maybe Anish was thinking about this particular variation. So rook will come back, bishop takes c3. Notice that bishop f3 places a little pin on the knight on e2. B takes c3, queen h4. And this is just a sample line, but we'll give you an idea of how black, can become a little bit active on the king side over here. And the game, of course, is double-edged, right? Maybe you can even say black starting to pick up a little advantage after all. All right, so it's understandable why Lorenzo would avoid taking the pawn. So he plays rook g3. And now Giri continues with his plan. Bishop takes c3. And now, of course, the knight cannot capture, so double pawns in the Nimzo Indian. Bishop e4. So now that Anish is up a pawn, he trades down some material. Queen c2. Bishop takes d3, queen takes d3, and now knight h5, attacking the rook on g3 and protecting the g7 pawn. And so you might look at the position and say, hey, you got a 2700 grandmaster, right? 2724 rated grandmaster. He has a big ratings advantage, top player for many years. He has all his pawns, beautiful pawn structure. He's up a pawn. This should be easy win for Giri. All right, maybe not easy win, but he probably should win. He's just up a pawn, better pawn structure, right? Only issue for a black here is he's behind in development, and white has a lot of space. So rook h3. g6, and of course white has to be active because he's just down a pawn, so he has to have some kind of compensation. He has this preponderance in the center, big pawn center, and he's ahead in development. So these are the lead in development is a temporal advantage, so white really has to get going, and this is what he proceeds to do. So g6. Notice too, without black having a dark square bishop, the dark squares are quite weak, as obvious as you can see on the board, and white is going to try to exploit this. So G6 is played. Queen G5 can be played. It's a little risky here. For instance, E4, right? Queen G4, and the queen is kind of playing a risky game here. So Anish plays a natural move G6, but of course it does weaken the dark squares a little bit more. E4, mobile pawn center is a good pawn center. Pawn start to push, opens the door for the bishop on the C1 to H6 diagonal, and now Giri plays another pawn move D6. It's as if he's trying to mitigate the weakness on the dark squares. And of course he keeps options open, right, to play moves like knight D7, at some point even queen D7 if he wishes to, and with the idea of transferring the queen to queen side at some point. All right, since the position is closed, Anish probably feels comfortable that, hey, I don't really have to rush anything as far as my commitment of where I'm going to put the pieces, and so he's kind of taking his time here. But maybe more prudent would be to start being more concerned about development. Play a move like Queen E7. Say Knight G3, for example. Knights go off the board. Queen takes G3. The position looks calm, but it can get very wild. Knight C6, for example. And here's black saying, hey, you can have this pawn back. The idea behind this kind of move would be, say, for example, Queen C7, and then black will get active. All right, just castle. Bishop F4, for example, Rook AC8. Queen D6, F5. And you can see black is now fully developed. And, black has counter chances also. And black starts to take over the initiative in the game. And this now does not look like a friendly position for white. So that's just one idea. But instead of course, taking that pawn, Queen E7, Knight G3, Knight takes, Queen takes, Knight C6, for example, and Bishop H6. And so instead of just going pawn grabbing, right, keeping with the spirit of the position, right, developing, attacking, etc. So move like Bishop H6, exploiting the dark squares, getting another piece out. Castle queen side. And again, black is putting his emphasis on development. And with all his pawns intact and being caught up in development, he'll be able to deal with the space advantage that white possesses due to the pawn weakness on the queen side. Again, this is just sample variation here. So we can see white does have some activity due to the weakness of the dark squares. He has his big pawn center. But with black caught up in development and the weakness of the pawns on the white queen side and the exposure of the king, kind of evens things out a little bit. Okay, so back to the game. So instead of move like Queen E7, continuing on with development, Anish played another pawn move and played D6. Okay, game continued. Knight G3, as in the variation before. Knights come off the board, and Giri is happy with these exchanges, of course. And now, critical move in the game here. After Queen takes G3, Anish played the move F6. Again, it seems that he's just trying to make up for the weakness that was left by his bishop, dark square bishop being exchanged. And he's trying to put his pawns on dark squares in order to limit the scope of the dark square bishop on C1. Okay, so he's making a lot of pawn moves, and you can tell that he feels that, hey, position is still closed. I've traded off, several pieces. So even though I'm not really focusing on my development, I should be relatively safe. That seems to be Giri's mentality at this point, right? And he's just gonna continue to make these type of moves. he doesn't want the bishop on g5, so he's like, hey, I'll put my pawns on dark squares to kind of mitigate the weakness of those squares. Lorenzo plays bishop h6. He also avoids this, I'm not going to call it a trap, because I don't know if Giri was setting a trap intentionally, but there is a trap in this position. And many players down a pawn in this situation might be tempted to go for a move like queen takes g6 check. All right, this is available. So queen takes g6, h takes g6, rook takes rook. Get the queen back. And then you go into this endgame. But again, who does the endgame favor? It favors the side with the better pawn structure. And now white space advantage is not so intimidating. And this is, again, just a sample line, but this is good for black. And you can see it's demonstrated by this weakness of pawns on the c file here. Play can continue in this type of manner, and black will probably go on to win an endgame like this. So I don't know if Giri was setting the trap, but it's definitely inherent in the position there. Lorenzo avoids this move, and he plays bishop h6. And his idea, again, is just to play active with his pieces. He understands also that he has to open up the position. So he basically, to make it real simple, he wants to play bishop h6, castle, queenside, and play a move e5, busting open the position while all of black's pieces are still on the back rank. And it just goes to show you how basic chess principles still apply even in the age of the super chess engines and super grandmasters, right? You see a situation like this where all your opponent's pieces on the back rank, you still, you have to attack. And this is what Lorenzo does. So bishop h6, rook g8. Again, another type of like prophylactic move. He wants to keep the bishop off g7. All right. So again, more active will be a move like queen e7. Right, planning on connecting the rooks, getting the knight in the game, connecting the rooks. So play could continue from here. e5, right? White's plan. Develop. Knight d7. Takes. King f1. Queen h4. And this gives black a chance. I'm not going to go through all of my analysis, but this gives black a chance to equalize by getting his pieces developed. That's basically black's only issue at this point. If queen d7 here, queen f3. Again, black can just play queen e7 at this point, but I just wanted to point it out to you. So rook g8 was played, and now e5. Knight d7. So now Giri's like, man, I better get my pieces in the game. Castle's queenside. Real simple play by white. And now queen e7. E takes f6. Knight takes f6. Simple chess. Bishop g5. Knight e4. And this is probably a move that Giri saw in a long line, right? Long line of calculation. And it looks like it solves all the problems. He's trying to solve all the problems in one move, because what's going to happen, right? You're going to get queen h5, rook f3. You're going to get this pin on the knight. So he tries to solve everything in this one move. And this basically this is the this is like falling through the trap door. Basically, he loses just right on the spot, pretty much here. The 94. Bishop takes. Again, real simple chess. Knight takes. F takes. King takes. And guess what? Look at the pawn on Look at the pawn on the H7 here. Pawn on H7 is just hanging, and this allows easy access to the 7th rank. Right, as the rook is no longer on H8 as it was before. So Giri says, all right, I'm gonna castle by hand. I'm gonna play King C8, King B7. However, open that file. And with the rooks not being connected, white gets into a dominating position. It's too slow. See, now the C7 pawn is threatened. King B7 takes, and the rest of the game really needs no commentary, as it's just basically just a king hunt and a lot of abuse going on. Right, rook takes, and this material getting grabbed. King B3, and at this point, Giri resigned. So basically, this game looks like one of those old positions from like the 1800s, like Steinitz versus Count von Bartelbaron, where he was, Steinitz put his rooks on the 7th rank, and then, it was like a forced mate, and then said von Bartelbaron left the playing hall and never finished the game or something like that. So great game by Lorenzo, definitely considered an upset. Although, 25-56, very strong player in his own right. So it's kind of like you can't just treat it like, he's playing like a 2,000 player or something like that. But another idea that I had and I was thinking about is these are the type of things that make the chess Olympiad great, because you'll see players that you never get to see, different styles, and they just haven't, had that exposure or been able to, break out, into those, top ranks in the chess world. But it made me think, like, when these top players are just playing each other all the time, right? It's like they're seeing the same games over and over. That's why, I have like a love-hate affair with chess, because, of course I love the game. That's why I do these videos, right? It's not like I'm making like all kind of money and stuff like that. I just love the game. I've been playing for a long time, since the pre-engine era. And although I appreciate what the engines have done, it's like, as far as like boosting the quality of the games, it just seems like, man, it's dried up the game also, because there are so many things that are, lines that are just unplayable. I was looking at some old games the other day. I think I came across a game between Polgaevsky with the white pieces. I can't remember what year it was, but Polgaevsky with the white pieces versus John Nunn. And John Nunn played the Budapest Gambit, right, with the black pieces, right? These are things that you would see, a long time ago, because the analysis was fluid. It was like human analysis. There were errors. People would look at it, I can improve on this. And you would see these kind of openings at, at the top levels, not all the time, because, again, even by the 1980s and 90s, a lot of things were considered, pretty much, unplayable, right? The last time you really saw the King's Gambit, for example, at the highest level was probably like the 90s, and only a few GMs were playing it at the time. I think the last really strong GM that played it consistently was Alexei Fedorov, and he was about like 2,600. He was playing 26 to 2,700, and he was playing like that up until like 99, 2000. And then he stopped playing the King's Gambit, right? The engines became too strong. It was just too much. So to me, that's kind of sad in the way that you won't see these things at the top level anymore. And in going over these games for the chess Olympiad, as I search for games that stand out to me to analyze, to bring to you. I only saw one Dutch defense game in the entire Olympiad, and I'm like, man, I love the Dutch defense. I love looking at those games and the positions that result from the Dutch defense. But I only saw one pure Dutch defense the whole game, right? D4, F5. I'm not sure if some games transpose, like if somebody opened up with E6 and then F5, but so far I saw one game like that. I didn't see one game that featured the Alekhine defense, for example, E4, Knight F6. So I saw a lot of, of course, Queen's Gambit declined, Nimzo Indians, Roy Lopez, Joko Piano, of course, and it's just so boring. So it's really refreshing to see a game like this. And I also want to ask the question, like, with these players almost being like in a bubble, right, where they just play each other over and over. The top players, right? Carlsen, Niche, well, not so, I guess not so much Niche anymore, but like, Ali Reza, all these top players playing each other over and over. I wonder, do they actually, like, I don't know. It's almost like they get so used to each other that they become vulnerable, like if they play somebody that doesn't, I don't know. It's almost like their chess style is not like universal, like the older players. I'm talking about like the players from 80s and 70s. It's kind of like they're not used to playing, people that play like in a different style or even different type of openings. It's like if they haven't analyzed the opening to death, they might be susceptible to being defeated. It's like they're that dependent on the engines and that dependent on opening preparation now. I mean, that's just a thought. I want to know what you guys think in the comments, but that's what it like this game looks like that. I know it's just one game, right? But there's another game I'm gonna look at too by I forgot that, man. I can't remember this. Is it Jabbar? I might be, man. I'm probably killing the guy's name. Yabova. Is that how you say his last name? Yabova. But he played a Verisov attack. That's something, again, that's one of those like old openers that you never see, right? Verisov, Victor Verisov attack. D4 followed by knight C3, right? Instead of playing, and he played a nice attacking game. I forgot against the Grandmaster. I'm gonna go over that. That'd probably be my next video. But again, man, it seems like if the game is not like some heavily analyzed game, and analyze opening like a Petrov, where they're going in 30, 40 moves or something like that. It's like a guy that's 2,500, 2,600, he has a chance. It's kind of like, it's like you got to avoid those lines where it's like these guys have, prepared, extensively. But it's like if you could get into something where they might not have prepared that much, it's like you got a chance. Because this game to me was like a crushing game, and it wasn't like, I don't know, it was just like the error that Giri made with the 94 was just crazy. And I'm just like, man, like, of course anybody can make mistakes, right? But it was just like, I was really surprised to see him, get crushed like that. But I mean, it happens. I mean, it's like, he's at the end of the day, right? He's only human. But yeah, this 94, right, trying to solve all the problems. But I mean, like, even when I look at this position, I mean, I see, for instance, a pawn on H7. That's an issue. When I go back and I look at a position like this, I'm like, hey, I look at this position. I'm like, hey, I need to develop my pieces. I'm not saying I can win or anything like that, but just my basic chess knowledge that I've learned from years of playing chess. I'm like, man, I have no development. I know the position is sort of closed, but the white's gonna open this position soon with this mobile pawn center. These are just general ways, I think. So anyway, those are just my thoughts. Of course, instead of F6, I don't even know if I gave recommendation here. Instead of F6, there's basically two ideas that black can use, right? That'll probably keep them safe here. Again, just simple. Develop pieces. Knight D7. Allow bishop H6. Yes, we know the dark squares are weak. Keep it moving. Queen E7, for example, and then say when E5 comes, take. Right, this is the idea. This is why A.Giri played Rook G8 to stop this. Is it really that big of a deal? No. Okay. Trade off some more pieces. You play H5. Okay, so now that rook on G3 has to find another job. Queen E4. All right. And black has a decent game. Because this is really all it's about at the end of the day. Now you get your pieces developed. And black still has to get that rook on G8 in the game. Right? Which he'll be able to do. Right? Rook G3, for example, C5. And you got a game here. Right? Black has, good pawn structure. Right? Does white have enough attacking chances to, carry the day? Probably not. And the game will probably turn around for black. In black's favor, at some point. So that's one idea, is just knight D7. Basically develop the pieces, right? Knight D7, queen E7. The other idea is queen D7. The idea here is the same thing. I'm developing the pieces, but just in a different way. The idea behind this is just to get the queen moved to the queen side and start attacking those pawns over there. So again, bishop H6, rook G8, right? See, again, now bishop F4. So now black counterattack. So this is black's idea here. See how he's attacking both the E pawn and the C pawn at the same time. Queen goes there to protect, because this would be bad now because of this. And the bishop will wind up getting trapped. Check it out. So king D2, right? Because it's check here, right? King D2. And now, great move by black. G5. And this is the idea of playing the rook over to G8. G5, attacking the the rook and the bishop at the same time. Only way to defend is to play rook H4 and exploit this lack of development once again by black, right? The rooks aren't coordinated. So king D7. So now he's like, hey, I'm going to try to coordinate. This gives white a little time. Bishop takes G5. Queen is attacked. So the queen goes to F5. And now the threat is back again to take the bishop. And now there's nothing white can do about it because of this deadly pin. So say like rook F4, you just take. And there, black would actually be winning. So after this, instead of taking that pawn, queen D3 is better, just protecting everything. And now, similar to the last variation, except black is just attacking on the queen side. Bishop D5, queen E7. Now we're going to bring the knight to C6 instead of D5. I'm sorry, instead of D7. Just putting pressure on the F7 pawn, discouraging moves like king D7, for example, trying to join, connect the rooks. So knight C6, knight to knight A5, attacking the C pawn. This is something that you see commonly in Nimzo Indian defense, especially in the Sämisch variation, the F3 variation. And again, play is double-edged. So those are two different plans that Black had to choose from, but he instead chose f6. A little bit too ambitious. One thing I'll say too on Giri's behalf, he never saw the guy, right? He doesn't, he doesn't know, know who this guy is, and he's totally surprised. And like I said, that's what made me think of the dependence on engines and just the over preparation that takes place today. Is yes, you might be a specialist in Roy Lopez and specialist in Petrov, something like that, and you have everything memorized, but are you really able to adapt? And this is why I'm surprised you didn't see more unorthodox openings by lesser rated players, because I think that would have been a real that would have been, first of all, it'd been really fun to watch. I would have loved to see King's Gambit or something. And I get it, these guys probably just destroy it most, 9 out of 10 times. But I would have loved to see, Scandinavians, things, those type of openings, Shigorin defenses. That's another defense I don't think I saw in the tournament at all. Shigorin, no Alban counter gambits. Even when the GMs were playing like weaker players, like for instance, like 2,000 rated players, they were still playing like Roy Lopez, this solid. It was like they weren't. I don't know. Like if I was rated like 2,700 and I'm playing somebody 2,000, I'd probably play King's Gambit or something like that. Give the fans something to, give the crowd something to look at. Play King's Gambit, play Danish Gambit or something like that. The guy's not gonna beat you most, 9 out of 10 times, right? It's just the rating disparity is too much. You could basically play whatever you want. This is the time to play, for the crowd, so to speak, right? I don't want to see Peter Leko playing, a guy that's 2,100. And he's playing Berlin defense with the black pieces, something like that, or he's playing classical Roy Lopez. I want to see go after him. Let's see King's Gambit. Let's see Budapest Alban counter gambit, stuff like that. But I get it, to each his own. But anyway, that's my little commentary. Again, props, man. Shout out to Lorenzo Lodici. Showing that good chess can be played, by all type of players, unknown players all across the world. And I'll be looking. There's another game too. Actually, speaking of Peter Leko, that's right. He played a game against Peter Leko too, and I'm gonna show that also. So I think I'm gonna look at Bodor Jabova's game, and Veresov, the Viktor Veresov attack, and we're gonna talk some more in the next video. But again, please like, subscribe, check the links below. There's always like books and stuff like that down there. Please donate, but at the very least, just hit the thumbs up so we could get the algorithm going, and let me know what you think in the video, and I'll talk to you guys later on.